welcome everyone who stayed back. I know we're following a pretty hard, tough act. Anyway, there are some great opportunities in the strategic metals, and graphite certainly represents a huge opportunity within that space. Has not gotten the attention lately that its sister minerals like lithium and cobalt got, or has been getting for the past year anyway, but maybe we can change that starting today. My name is Dean McPherson. Welcome. I'm hoping you're having a good show. I am with the Toronto Stock Exchange. I am head of global mining for the Toronto Stock Exchange and the Toronto Stock Exchange, and our venture exchange, pardon me. Today I have Eric from Novamont, yeah. And of course, not on graphite, we all know Gregory over the years. So, guys, why don't we start with a short summary of each company and yourselves, and we go into some questions after, and for the last 5 minutes or so, we'll ask the audience to join us in adding some questions, okay?
Senior first?
Why don't we start with Novamont? You want to start, Eric?
Okay, then I wanted to let the major people first.
The senior.
Senior, I don't want to say it in English. Okay, that's good. So we funded Novamont. I incorporated the company in 2012. I brought the company public 2013. My personal background is airborne geophysics. I have a master in geophysics. So graphite is a commodity that is very detectable with geophysics. So we thought, let's explore all southern province of Quebec. Why this area? Because there's currently only one producing mine in North America. Is owned by Imris Graphite and Carbon. We knew they were running out of ore eventually. So let's find the next mine in North America. Was the spirit of New World mining at the beginning. And we discovered this deposit in late 2014. First drilling 2015. Now it's a pre-feasibility level after $12 million invested in it. Now it's like next steps. It's bankable feasibility, and it's a great discovery we have made from geophysics to the level it is now.
Yes, my name is Greg Bowes, CEO of Northern Graphite. I'm a geologist, MBA type. I've been in the mining and engineering business for about 30 years. Mainly gold and base metals. And the gold company I was involved with a few years ago was bought out by IM Gold. And I got asked to get involved in a graphite project. I knew that graphite was actually the lead in your pencil, which most people don't know. But anyway, I knew nothing about graphite at the time, but that was 2010, 2011. And the predecessor company went back before then. So we were the first of the new graphite companies, if you want to put it that way. Because we've been at it for a while, we have a full feasibility study. We have our major environmental permit. We can start construction in 2018 if we had $100 million, which we do not. So the next step is mine financing. And strategic partnerships, construction, all that good stuff. And the mine is located, or the deposit, 4.5 hours north of Toronto, about 5 hours from the Port of Montreal, and 2.5 hours from my house, which is a big improvement over my previous job because the mine was in Burkina Faso, West Africa, and it's easier to drive to this project than it is to fly to Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso.
Thank you, Greg. As I started out by saying, graphite, many of you might know, or not, is one of 3 critical minerals that are required to make a lithium battery. Guys, can you talk a little bit about the global trends in terms of supply, demand, and where you see the market going for graphite?
Market for graphite is a much bigger market than it is for lithium and cobalt for other battery minerals. Maybe there's also nickel that is a comparable market, even bigger than graphite. It's maybe 1.1 million ton a year that is traded. Half of it that is low quality graphite, amorphous graphite, and the other half is flake graphite. Mainly flake graphite is produced in China, 67-70% of the market. And if you look at it in 2014, it was 55% going in refractories, the bricks that goes in the steel industry. So it is historically the driving force for pricing of graphite. And it's just today that the battery market went from 9% of market share in 2014, and now the battery market start to have a real impact on pricing since actually last fall. And it's now 25% of the market, 20-25% now is battery, and refractory went down to 35-40%. So that's the big trend, and the trend is Chinese market always consume a lot of graphite internally, was a net exporter of graphite, but what we will see pretty soon is China becoming a net importer of graphite. That's what we will see.
Yeah, I guess I'll just add a few comments to that. The thing that really differentiates lithium, cobalt, and graphite is that from, let's say, mainstream base metals, they are all sitting around waiting for 3 or 4% economic growth to return. We have a new market that's a $20 billion market. It's here today, and it's growing at over 20% a year. And as Eric said, the demand for graphite from batteries has gone from nothing around 2006 to where it's now 25% of the market. If you look at forecasts, and everybody has a forecast, but Benchmark Mineral Intelligence estimates that 300 gigawatt hours of lithium-ion battery manufacturing capacity is under construction right now and will be online by 2021. That's a requirement for 600,000 tons of flake graphite to make the batteries to fill up those factories. Current production of flake graphite is probably 650,000 tons. So if those forecasts are correct, we need to double graphite production by 2021. And even if they prove to be wildly optimistic, which they often do, and let's say they're only 30% right, we still need multiple new graphite mines.
Okay, so we're clear that there's a supply-demand imbalance, so there's a huge opportunity here to fill this gap. What are your thoughts as to why is it that graphite seems to be lagging the lithium and cobalt in the past year, 2 years, for instance?
My take on it, graphite, it's a significantly bigger market than lithium and cobalt. And the impact on the battery space and battery demand on graphite is just starting to have an impact. It's a much bigger market. So you start to see that impact since September. The refractory business historically wasn't doing very good in the last few years. The steel maker in the US and everywhere were not buying as much graphite as they were. The growth in China wasn't too big until last September, where they resume operation big time. They start to have a lot of pollution things that prevent the operation in China. And now it's all resuming at the same time. And guess what? There's not so much graphite anymore available because the battery market is competing in the market. So I'm talking a lot with trading houses these days because we're starting to place some graphite. And historically, people buying from China to place it in the US, suddenly the supplier in China, the price is not good enough in North America, so they want to keep it for them to sell in China. So the Chinese market is crazy because the 23 factory of batteries mainly are in China. You know, there's Tesla here, LG Chem, but there's a huge factory, CATL, 3 times the size of Tesla. Big plants are being built in China, and supply start to be a big issue in China. So you will see Chinese becoming a net importer of graphite, which is very good.
Do you see any differences in the quality, the flake size demand? Is there a greater demand in a particular size flake, medium, small, or large? What are you seeing?
Yes, that's one of the things that really makes industrial minerals different from base metals or precious metals, which you're all used to, is that your gold is the same as my gold, your copper is the same, or my copper is the same as your copper, everybody gets the same price. In industrial minerals, that's not true. Prices vary widely by quality, so you can have a graphite concentrate that's essentially worthless all the way up to a graphite concentrate that's worth a few $1,000s a ton. And with graphite, that generally means flake size and purity. So generally speaking, most of the leading deposits like ours can achieve the required purity levels. So then it comes down to what's the flake size distribution in the deposit. And the large flake sizes command the highest price. But they're also smaller markets, so we have to be a little bit careful there, because if a number of new mines come on, there's the risk that they will flood those small markets and actually cause prices to go down. The battery demand is almost entirely in the small flake size range, and that is because it's plentiful and it's cheap in China. You can make the batteries anode material out of large flake, but why would you? You can make a lot more money in other markets than grinding it up for the battery market. But I think what's going to happen is that as the battery market grows, there won't be enough small flake, and it will force its way into the larger flake sizes. They will have to be used for batteries, and the only way they can be used is higher prices. So the whole value chain will go up. The other thing I will add is a lot of deposits have a high percentage of fines, and generally fines cannot be used in any of the major markets like steel, batteries, consumer electronics, which is expandable graphite. So that's a little bit of a risk with some deposits. So I guess the simple story is large flake is always better. You can use it for large flake markets, and if you had to, you could grind it up for batteries.
Okay, so that's not a real barrier for either of you, you're saying? Eric, do you have anything to add?
But you realize if you were talking a day of talking together about the graphite markets, you wouldn't get anything yet. It's a very complicated market. There's a lot of different customers. But I was this week in Houston and Texas talking to Energy Prospector Group, a kind of energy investment group. But we need to pay attention now to these markets, because that's the real future. If you have a lot of investment in oil and gas, in energy, there will be a displacement of barrel of oil per day that will be significant, that will cause a glut of oil, that the same thing that happened a few years ago. So even though this is very complicated market today, it's stuff that people will pay attention a lot in the next few years. If you look Bloomberg, I just made for these guys in Houston, I thought it was very, very interesting. When the EV market will displace 2 million barrels of oil per day, when this will happen, with the current growth of 60% of EV per year, by 2023, 2 barrels of oil per day will be displaced. So suddenly we'll have all the oil and gas, and all these guys will try to understand these graphite complex market. So people like you now that are trying to pay attention at the complexity of graphite will be rewarded. It will be a major impact for oil and gas investors, and the solution is to come in battery minerals. That's the edge solution.
We're seeing a lot of activity in the market around the strategic battery metals, certainly on the stock exchange for listed companies. We have about 26 or 30 companies listed on our exchanges, on both the venture and the big board. Maybe one on the big board, actually. They're mostly juniors on the venture. But there are a lot of great companies. The challenge most investors usually have in getting themselves excited about companies in the exploration and pursuing development stage is the timeline to actual production. And the challenge is, of course, always the capital. Are you able to access capital? Are you confident that you'll be able to? Greg, you mentioned you'll need something north of 100 million to go into production. How do you guys see that? How do you relate to investors who are saying, yeah, great asset, but how are they going to finance it?
Yes, well, first of all, $100 million is a lot of money for you and I, but in terms of a mining project, it's fairly reasonable. There's a lot of lithium projects that are $300 million to $500 million, so that's a little bit of a bigger challenge. In our particular case, we think the project can support $40 or $50 million in debt financing, probably about 10 or maybe 15 in equipment leasing. We're going to need about 40 million in equity. The way the current market sits, we're not going to get that unless we have a strategic partner, and most of the other graphite companies are in the same boat. And you know, the fact that graphite has lagged behind lithium and cobalt enables us to look at what happened in those markets and kind of learn from that experience. And what is very obvious from the way lithium went, I'll use the example of Lithium Americas. They did their feasibility study in 2012. Everybody saw the looming lithium supply problem. Everybody saw the growth in EVs. They never got a strategic partner until 2016, and it happened because the lithium price took off, there were shortages, and all of a sudden the big companies said, holy, we've got to do something. There was a sense of urgency, there was a sense of panic, and now we've had multiple deals done in the lithium market. We need that kind of tension and sense of urgency to push the graphite guys into strategic partnerships and offtake agreements. There have been dozens of MOUs and press releases issued in the graphite space on strategic partnerships and offtakes. I would say the first real one has not been signed yet by anyone, and a real one is one that involves a financial commitment, but it's coming.
Okay,
No,
that's
right.
exciting. Eric, you want to add anything?
Well, it's all true what Greg is saying, you know. People start to buy EV now. So we need battery to do that. So now there's 23 big factory being built. They will be commissioned by 2021. And these big factory, we need to buy graphite, lithium, cobalt. And they will start their procurement process that is lagging behind the people buying the cars. So you will see by 2020-21, it will require another $500,000. It will double the graphite market, basically. And suddenly it will take, like we plan to produce 50,000 tons a year, it's 10 times what we are planning to produce. So wherever they will take it on the planet will impact our market, will impact Greg's, will impact all the juniors in North America. But it will happen when they will need it, when they will do the real procurement. What Vancouver saw in 2012 and 13, actually, when you started Northern Graphite and we started to explore when every graphite was at $3, the reason that was behind it in 2012-13 is just happening today. The fundamental is even stronger today. It's just the people will realize it with fundamental by 2019-20. There's no other options. In these 23 different factories, Volkswagen is not there. Volkswagen announced recently $60 billion investment only in batteries. It's 12 times the size of Tesla. It's 1.2 million tons of graphite only for Volkswagen.
Yeah.
Ford announced 11 billion last week. So probably Ford, Volkswagen, they hired guys smart like Greg and I. Hey, can you find some graphite? So we start receiving call, takes time, and they will realize, my gosh, we need to make deal. But that will all happen in the next 24 months. There's no way around it. It will need to happen. There will be phenomenal growth for all the battery going in the battery in the next 24, 36 months.
Yeah.
Keep the faith. It will happen for sure.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
We're running out of time. Just close to wrapping up here, I want to get a couple of questions in if there are any from the audience. You can probably join the microphone so I'll know. But gentlemen, if there is anything let's get to the questions first.
Isn't in the graphite business? Isn't the real value is not in mining the graphite, but in the finished engineered product, right, for specific end users? Can you guys talk about that?
Well, yes and no. I mean, we've all done feasibility studies and pre-feasibility studies, and all of it is based on selling run-of-mine concentrate to end users. So that's kind of the basic economics. Then there are literally dozens of value-added upgrading opportunities which require various levels of investment. Some of them, I would say, are relatively low-tech. Some of them are very high tech. So, for example, producing anode material for electric vehicles that is CVD coated and blended with synthetic graphite, very few companies have the IP to do that. So it's the whole range. But I think the short answer is graphite mines have to be economic, firstly, based on producing the concentrate, and then can take advantage of various upgrading opportunities. But you can't use an upgrading opportunity to make a uneconomic mine economic.
Yeah, you need to have a very good mining project to put your foundation in. And the higher you go in the value chain, if you make battery, for instance, it's a very thin margin business. That's why it's only LG Chem, Samsung, Panasonic that are very successful at making it. Even Nissan sold their division on batteries. So you go down the chain. If you were giving me the choice, I would just do a big fat margin on my flake concentrate, but I need to sell 52,000 tons a year, so I will need to upgrade some because, you know, Tesla don't want to upgrade it themselves. So sometimes it's not about the margin, it's the economics, it's about getting the volume out, and you need to process it for your customer, you know. But it's a lot of money in the mining itself.
Thank you.
There's been an ongoing effort to explore new battery chemistries, and with the goal of reducing or eliminating expensive components, or, you know, components that might be coming from some problem countries. Do you anticipate in maybe 5 to 7 years that they'll want to design graphite out of the cathode or anode areas?
No, because the general development cycle for a new battery technology is about 20 years. Lithium-ion batteries went commercial in 1993, and it was only in the last 6 or 7 years they reached a point that they got widespread commercial acceptance, and now you have a huge value supply chain, manufacturing chain. The obvious successor to lithium-ion batteries is not where lithium-ion batteries were in 1993. Now, you can argue the technology has been compressed a bit and might be quicker, but 5 or 10 years, I'd say maybe 10, but definitely not 5.
But you know, it's like the cars. The cars is I'm driving a Tesla now. I can tell you the ICE car, internal combustion engine, is a very bad technology. So, I mean, Ford invented it in 1910 with the Model T, and they started the mass production. And it's only today, and it's an obvious worse technology than the electric car. But still, do you believe that next year there won't be any ICE car sold? No, but it's the same thing for lithium-ion battery market. It's just today that we can have the level of commercialization to get the economy of scale to start to think of replacing a technology and making it a huge market. Like these companies I'm talking about, they will build billions of dollars of capacity of lithium-ion battery. So the lithium-ion battery is there for 100 years. Maybe there will be some niche new battery chemistry that will come in, and if they reach this economy of scale and mass acceptance, yeah, maybe we can. And probably there will be an application. If you electrify 100% of everything, there will be a place for lithium-ion for almost every application, but maybe LTO for some, maybe some other niche technology for specific application. But lithium-ion is there to stay for a long time.
Yeah.
I really believe it.
Yeah, there will be incremental improvements in it, adding a little bit of silicon, for example, they're doing now, and various other things, but it's basically lithium-ion.
And it was
batteries.
$1,000 per kilowatt hour, $1,000 per kilowatt hour in 2010. And it's just now, if you do a big deal, you're a car maker, you can get it at $130 per kilowatt hour in only 7 years, and they want to reach the $100 per kilowatt hour. So it's a lot of cost reduction. So I mean, it is just happening, and it will stay like this for a long time.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, one more.
Please.
Do you think that graphene has potential to significantly affect graphite demand in the future?
I hope so, but I doubt it. So one application of graphene that we are, starting to work with a lab in Montreal is, in a cathode, the graphite goes in the anode. In the cathode, there's carbon black that goes as an additive conductor. So graphene might be a very good to replace this additive conductor, the graphene. So the specific commodity, you make 1 ton of graphite, you can make almost the graphene for the entire planet today. So I don't think it will, it's not my marketing effort, it's not on this to place 1 ton of graphite, but it's a very interesting thing to do some processing and do some very specific market.
Greg?
Yeah, I very much agree with that. I had a similar anecdote, which is basically if you could perfectly delaminate 1 ton of natural graphite, you could make a sheet that would cover New York City, 1 ton. So we're going to produce 20,000 tons a year. Obviously, there's no commercial means of making graphene in scale yet. There are no true commercial graphene products that take advantage of all of its wonderful attributes. I think it's going to be a fabulous thing when they solve it, but it's still very much an R&D effort right now. And yeah, so I think in terms of it affecting graphite supply demand in the short term, highly unlikely.
Okay,
But
thanks.
we're ready. If you want graphene, we can give you the graphite to do it, no problem.
We're pretty much out of time, but before we step off stage, I just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to leave with investors and potential investors the last word on each of your companies. Want to start off again, Eric, or finish off?
We have a lot of milestones coming for us. So we discovered a deposit 2013. So we decided to make a small plant, small capacity, 1,000 ton per year. We'll start producing in June. We started the construction actually last week, received 3 flatbeds of equipment in an existing plant at our project site. So this week, this few months, you will see we start the commissioning of that plant. And also in September, we'll get the bankable feasibility on our project, on our commercial scale mine. So that's the main milestones for us this year.
Yeah, I'll just leave you with 2 thoughts. One on the big picture thought is that the automobile market is huge, and the lithium, graphite, cobalt, they're small specialty markets. So I don't think electric vehicles are going to take over the world. But if they are only modestly successful, and by modestly successful I mean by 2020, 2022, 2 or 3 or 4% of new car sales are electric. I think that's a very achievable goal, and we need multiple new graphite mines just for that, never mind all of the blue sky stuff. As far as our project goes, as I said, we're ready to start construction in 2018 if we have the financing. So it's an advanced stage project, good location, ready to go. And I'll add one wild card in there. A week or 2 ago, we announced that we had filed a patent on a proprietary purification process. Junior companies put out press releases all the time. I would say the thing that differentiates this press release is that our technology partner and the co-inventor of the patent is Hatch Inc., which is one of the largest process engineering companies in the world. So that's a pretty strong third-party endorsement that they have confidence in this process to provide a real alternative to the Chinese method of purification. And all of the natural graphite that's used in batteries right now is purified in China. So we need an alternative.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. Pretty exciting. I think there are a lot of opportunities in the graphite space, and certainly looking forward to hearing some more. You can visit both Northern Graphite and Novo Mundo at their booths. Thank you.